Hello and welcome to Guardian Talks. My name is Fatima Rachel. Every year the world comes together to mark the World Suicide Prevention Day every 10th of September. This year's theme is changing the narrative around suicide. Now the question is not if we should talk about suicide, but when we should talk about suicide. Because according to the Federal Ministry of Health and Social Welfare, 15,000 Nigerians die by suicide every year. And suicide is one of the top causes of death among young Nigerians between the ages of 15 to 29. Today we'll be having the conversation around suicide with a certified clinical psychologist, Dr. Miracle Iyoma. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now to begin the question, this year's theme is changing the narrative around suicide. And we know that Nigerians out there are battling with pressures of this life, joblessness. From your own perspective, what does this mean?
Yes, so this year's theme is changing the narrative around suicide. And it's very important because even with your question, it shows that a lot of times people think that when one is jobless or when one is facing pressure, then the next thing to do is to take one's life, which is suicide, right? Because suicide means taking your own life. Yeah. And it's important to note that suicide in itself is a mental health condition. So it is not as a result of life's pressure, because if suicide is a response to life's pressure, then every one of us should be dead. Because I'm sure that there is nobody here or listening to me right now who hasn't at one point or the other faced the pressure of life. Yeah, there are only three categories of people when it comes to challenges. People currently in a challenge, people just coming out of a challenge, people about to go into a challenge. Everyone belongs to at least one of these categories. So suicide is not a response to life's pressure, right? Suicide is a mental health condition, many times emanating from your perception of life's pressure. Yeah. So that narrative is something that we need to adjust when talking about suicide.
All right, well said. So let's look at the theme, changing the narrative around suicide. From your own perspective, do you think this theme captures the whole essence of, this issue, suicide?
Yes, just like I said earlier, we need to change the perspective of people have about and around suicide. Because a lot of people have the wrong, in fact, before now, and even till now, a lot of people will say things like he committed suicide or she committed suicide. But that's a wrong narrative. That's a wrong word or sentence to use when talking about people who die by suicide. Because when you say he or she committed suicide, what you are trying to say or what you're trying to communicate is suicide is a crime. So they committed a crime. But no, they did not commit suicide. They died by suicide. That's the right narrative. That's the right way to put it. That shifts our perspective from it being a crime to it being what it should be, a mental health condition. To say people do not commit suicide, but people die by suicide. Yeah. So there are narratives like that, which even now seeps into the issue around it being a crime. For example, in Nigeria, if you die by suicide, you're seen as a criminal. And because there are three levels of suicide: there's suicidal ideation, there's suicidal attempt, there's suicidal completion. So suicidal ideation is suicidal thoughts, having a thoughts of suicide, thinking about suicide. Then the suicidal attempt, that's attempting to take your own life. And then the suicidal completion, that's the act of actually now dying by suicide. So not everybody who attempts or who thinks about suicide attempts suicide. There are a lot of people, for example, who have come across both in therapy sessions and everyday life, who think about suicide, who have thought about taking their life but have never attempted to take their life. Why there are people who have attempted to take their life, they have thought about it and then proceeded to attempt to take their life and they have never succeeded. So maybe they were caught, maybe they changed their mind in the process, whatever it is. But then there are now people who attempt and then complete it, now actually die by suicide. So in Nigeria, for example, if you attempt suicide and you are unsuccessful, you would be prosecuted. That doesn't make any sense, at least to me as a mental health professional. Yeah, that's just like saying if someone is having schizophrenia or depression, they should be persecuted. It doesn't make any sense to me why someone would be persecuted for wanting to take their life. Such a person definitely and obviously needs mental health attention and not incarceration.
Well said. Thank you so much. Okay, now let's look at this from the angle of suicide being a silent menace in the society. When you talk about suicide, people are like, oh, please, you're not the only one going through things in life. And as a result, people don't want to share their thoughts with others. I mean, what can be done to change the narrative around this?
Yes. So, very beautiful question. Again, awarenesses like this would definitely help in creating or changing the narrative, like we put it. Because the more people know about this, the more they understand how it works, the more they understand how they're supposed to approach this type of issues, right? So it's very important that we are open to listening to people, right? Hearing them out and not being judgmental. Yeah. What is easy for you might not be easy for somebody else. The fact that it comes natural for you does not mean it comes natural for somebody else. For example, you are here doing an interview, and if there's somebody who says, I can't seem to face the camera, it sounds strange to you, like, what's there? It's just to face the camera. But the fact that it comes natural for you doesn't mean it comes natural for somebody else out there. Yeah, so we must appreciate that, and then that helps you to employ empathy, because empathy is understanding the other person, seeing things from their frame of reference. Yeah, and putting yourself in their shoes. Empathy is not sympathy. Sympathy is feeling what the other person is feeling. Empathy is understanding what the other person is feeling. When I understand you, I don't need to agree with you, right? Empathy is not agreement, all right? I don't have to agree with you, but I can understand you. For example, if you come to me and say that you want to take your life, I won't agree with you. I won't want to take your life, but I can understand where you're coming from. I can understand why you want to take your life. That way, I have more chance to influence you to change your mind than if I was without empathy. Without empathy, it is much more difficult to influence people. Yeah.
All right. Okay, well said. Well, speaking about empathy now, I mean, report has it that 15,000 Nigerians died by suicide. And of course, suicide is one of the top causes of death among Nigerians between the ages of 15 to 29. Now, those figures, what does it speak? Does it speak about the fact that, I mean, we are emotionally disconnected from each other as a community? Is it that? Does it mean now like the world is now a silent village? I mean, you don't have anyone to share your thoughts with, you don't have anyone to share your views with. Why these high figures?
Yeah. Before now, one of the myths surrounding mental health in Nigeria and Africa was African man need to get mental health issue. African man need to get depression.
African man is a strong man.
Exactly. Say African man a hunger and they cause if you don't chop belly food, waiting they think again. That's a narrative. So it prevented a lot of people. In fact, even till now, to a very large extent, there's still a level of stigmatization around mental health issues. If you tell somebody, for example, that I'm speaking to a therapist, they might be taken aback, like, are you okay? Is there anything wrong with you? But it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you in that sense, because I tell people mental health is in the continuum, right? Where we have mental health and mental illness. So you don't have to be on either side of the extreme. So you don't have to be totally mentally healthy or totally mentally ill. Sometimes it could be somewhere in between both of them, right? So we must understand what mental health is, and thank God mental health is evolving. People are becoming more aware, which is even why it looks like we have the figures, because before now, which is why a lot of people thought Africans don't have mental health issues, because there were no records. So people didn't really know that, okay, these things exist. But right now, with awareness, people are becoming more aware that, okay, these things exist, people go through it, and things like that. So back to the question. What was the question again?
The question is, does it mean we're alienated from each other as a community now?
Yes. So now it's now very important that with this awareness, we become more open, right, with discussing our mental health, and also more open with how we, receive people and allow them to be vulnerable. Let me even shock you. I'm sure you know that more men die by suicide than women.
Okay.
Yes. So men are 4 times more likely to die by suicide than women. 4 times. So it means for every one woman who dies by suicide, 4 men have died. by suicide. Why is that so? There are a lot of reasons, but one that stands out is the fact that women are a lot more vulnerable than men. Women, if a
Open
woman
up
is having
more.
an issue, they will open up, they will call their friends, they will talk about it. But if a man is having an issue, he would rather keep it to himself. He will man up, like we like to say. He will be a man. He will bottle it until he can no longer handle it, and then he will take the suicide route. Yeah. So we must encourage people to become more vulnerable, right, and more open and talk about their issues so that we can reduce this stinge of suicide.
Thank you so much. Well said. Yeah. Okay, let me draw the next question from this. I mean, we know Africa is a spiritual community. We believe a lot in the spiritual. And many believe that, once you complain that you are depressed or you're having suicidal thoughts, they think, we're under a spiritual attack. What other myth do you think Nigerians need to unlearn, aside from suicidal thoughts being a spiritual problem?
Yes. So just to even address that particular myth, I tell people that mental health related issues are as spiritual as physical health related issues. Yeah. So when people ask me about, okay, how spiritual are mental health issues, I tell them the extent to which physical health issues are spiritual is the extent to which mental health issues are spiritual. Now make of that whatever you want, gauge how you think physical health issues are spiritual and then relate it to how mental health issues are spiritual. So if you think, for example, when you have typhoid and malaria, if you think there's a woman in your village disturbing you, then it's okay to think that when somebody has, depression. So really, because they mirror each other. Physical health mirrors mental health mirrors physical health a lot. For example, if you know that physical health issues are hereditary in nature. So if somebody in your family has high blood pressure, there is maybe a 40% chance that you might also have it in your lifetime. But the same thing with mental health issues. If somebody in your family has a mental health related issues, there's about a 40% chance you also have it in your lifetime. So that's really how mental health related issues are. So talking about myths surrounding suicide, right? Example, I've said that people have a myth that when you die by suicide, it is because of life stressors. It's because, you are going through a particular challenge, but that's not necessarily so. But your perception of life's pressure is a better causative factor than life's pressure in itself. Yeah, so how you see what you are going through is more important than what you are going through. Because that same, I will give you a typical example. So many years ago, I read in the newspaper that a lady died by suicide because she failed JAMB.
Earlier this year.
Yeah, not even the one of this year. This was even many years ago. There was a case of this year as well. In fact, there was a recent report of somebody, an OAU student who also died by suicide. Student, yeah. So there are reports like that. But this particular one was many years ago. This lady was 17 years old. This lady, that was her first JAMB that she was writing. And she died by suicide. But then the question would be, are there or were there not other people who were her age who were writing JAMB for the first time and who failed, who did not die by suicide? For example, using myself as a case study, in fact, I didn't just fail JAMB, I failed O-level. I wrote O-level 4 times. I failed WAEC, failed NECO. I failed every kind of O-level in Nigeria. WAEC, NECO, GC, I failed 3 of them. I wrote JAMB 3 times. Yeah, and I failed JAMB twice. And I never thought about taking my life. Yeah. So I was better qualified to take my life than that lady. But I decided not to. So it is really not what happens to you that determines your response. It is how you perceive what happens to you that actually determines your response. Yeah.
All right, well said. Okay, so during this conversation, you said something about women being expressive, and men bottling things up. So if there's one thing you want to say to a young Nigerian out there, a male gender, what would it be?
Yeah, so the male gender, what I would say to you is be more open, be more vulnerable. I understand the society doesn't even make it easy for us, really, because a lot of the times people, ladies particularly, would say, I need my man to be vulnerable. I need men to be vulnerable. The question I always like to ask is, can you handle their vulnerability? Yeah. Because, for example, when a man begins to talk to a point, they say, why are you talking like a woman? So actually, they expect that men are not supposed to talk so much, right? You're supposed to be a man of few words. That's when you're seen as a man, But all of that is a myth, right? All of that is a myth, and it's not necessarily true. For your own mental health, look for 1, 2, 3 trusted people that you can be totally vulnerable with, that you can vent with, that you can share your challenges with. because a problem shared, like they say, is a problem half solved. I like to add to that a problem concealed is a doubled problem. What that means is that when you conceal a problem, that problem can actually graduate to become other types of problem just by concealing it. So it's important that you open up, you're vulnerable, and you speak out more. I understand that women speak for support, men most times will speak for solutions, but it doesn't have to be you. You can speak for support as well, because if a man is speaking to you, for example, and he sees that, okay, let's say he needs 4 million naira, he sees that this person cannot give me 4 million, he will wonder, why will I be talking to him or talking to her? Can he give me the money? No. But then if it's a woman who needs 4 million, the woman will talk to you whether or not you can give her the 4 million. She will just talk to you because she feels like talking. But that talking would have reduced the emotional pressure that is on her. That is something we can learn from women. Men become more open, more vulnerable, and seek support more.
Thank you, Doctor.
Yeah.
All right, let's look at it from infrastructural deficiency now. Okay, so we have about 350 certified psychiatrists in Nigeria. I mean, and we have, I think in Nigeria now, the latest report has it that we're over 200 million in Nigeria. So with this shortage of staffing, I think I would say staffing, yeah. With this shortage of staffing, I mean, how does an average Nigerian access its support system?
Well, to start with, that's an outdated report, actually.
Okay.
You know, the 350 to 200 million, that's many years ago.
Okay.
It's not updated. We have a lot more psychiatrists we have a lot more psychiatrists now than we used to have before. And coupled with that...
Sorry to cut into your conversation. We have more now.
Yes.
But can an average Nigerian access it in terms of finances?
Yes, so good question. And we must understand that psychiatrists are not the only mental health professionals that we have. Yeah, for example, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm a clinical psychologist, okay, right? And I'm a mental health, that qualifies me to be a mental health professional, okay, right? Whether formally or even informally, right? So, for instance, in the typical psychiatric hospital, you will find a psychiatrist, doctor, you will find a psychiatrist nurse, you will find a clinical psychologist, you will find a social worker as well. You would most likely also find there's one other, because there are about five months. Yeah, you find I think a pharmacist, okay, right? A psychiatrist pharmacist within the purview of a psychiatric setting. So we must understand that mental health professionals are not just limited to psychiatrists. There are a lot of other mental health professionals, right, out there. I understand, like I said before, that mental health is still evolving. We are still getting to know about it. So, for example, when I went to school, even my undergraduate, my first degree, and I wanted to study psychology, I put in JAMB, I put in psychology as my first choice and my second choice of what I wanted to study. A lot of what people were asking me is, why would you want to study psychology? How does that make sense? You know, in fact, even my family were asking me, what is wrong? Are you okay? Why do you want to study psychology? People kept asking me, where would you work? I didn't even know, honestly. I didn't know. I just
so
said,
what ignited the interest?
What ignited the interest was I love to help people. And after doing my research, I realized, psychology was a very good course to study if you really wanted to help people. I said, okay, fine, that's what I want to do, you know. And I didn't know how I was going to make money. I just said, this is what I love, you know, and that's what I was going to do. Because I've always believed that where the heart of a man is, that's where his treasure would be. So if my heart is in something, my money is there. So I just decided to go for it. And, you know, when I even gained admission to study psychology, half of my class, or maybe even more than half, we're not even many, but as few as we were, more than half did not put in for psychology. More than half put in for something else, and they were thrown to psychology. Some wanted to study law, some wanted to study economics, some wanted to study different things. And, you know, that slot those places were filled up, they threw them to psychology. That's how things were in those days. But now, it's a lot different. A lot more people want to study psychology, and it's okay. You know, people are even encouraged to, why not study psychology? So it means that we are getting there a little bit more than we were before. So people are becoming more aware of mental health. The Gen Zs right now will say, my mental health, right? Yeah. So because people are becoming more aware, and that's a good thing, right? So the more aware people are, the more professionals we are going to have, and the more those needs are going to be met.
Thank you, Doctor. All right, the last question. If there's one thing you'd like to tell our viewers out there about World Suicide Prevention Day, what would it be for those having suicidal thoughts or those that are under the pressure of life?
Yes. So what I would say to you out there is seek help, right? Seek professional help. Talk to a professional today. Don't postpone it. Don't procrastinate. Talk to a professional today, right? Yeah, because help is available. Help is available. So if help is available, you want to grab it. You want to take the opportunity to seek that help. No matter how bad it is, I've seen people who have dealt with suicidal thoughts who have gotten better. Because you must realize that suicide for a lot of people, right, is an escape route. They are trying to escape from pain, the emotional pain and torture that they feel. So I usually like to tell them, what if you have an alternative route to meeting or achieving the same goal? You have an alternative route of actually militating that pain, dealing with that pain and emotional pain that you have. Would you embrace it? A lot of times they want to embrace it, because I ask, have you been dead before? The answer is no, I have not been dead before as well. So you never know what happens, after you die, because you might not actually have the peace you thought you were going to have when you die. So since you have not been dead, I've not been dead, and we're uncertain about what happens when we die, why not embrace what we know here and now, which is therapy? Yeah, we've seen people who have gotten better with therapy. Just by talking to a professional, they have felt better, they have dealt with the challenges they are going through, and they are better today. That can also be you.
Thank you, Doctor, for this insightful conversation.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure having you here.
Thank you very much for having me.
We've just had this insightful conversation with Dr. Miracle Iyoma, a certified clinical psychologist. Remember, suicide is not the cure. For everyone out there listening to us, every life matters, and hope is better than silence. I'm Fatima Rachel for Guardian TV.